How's it going, guys? My name is Ishan and today's video is extremely special. Today I interviewed Qayyum Rajan, who has a vast experience in the field of finance. In fact, he runs his own financial services company called ESG Analytics, which I've linked down below, along with his Twitter for you guys to follow him and learn more about him. He offers some super unique perspectives that I don't think many of you guys have ever thought about. Even me, there were a lot of cool things that he talked about that really opened my eyes to a whole new way of investing. He talks about everything from Bitcoin to the whole Gamestop situation, and even a lot about entrepreneurship and running your own business. So I really recommend you watch this interview fully through because it's a super powerful interview that will really inspire you to look at the market in a totally different way. So with that being said, make sure to like, subscribe, and watch till the end, and also check out his social link down below and ESG Analytics. With that being said, let's clock in. How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be interviewing Qayyum Rajan, who's the founder and CEO of ESG Analytics, which is an AI-powered ESG data analytics and research platform that uses alternative data to measure how companies and countries are implementing ESG practices. He's also a member of the top 30 under 30 here in BC, Canada, and was also recognized as one of the top 40 blockchain influencers of 2018. So this is a man who knows this stuff, and he's going to spill some of his knowledge on us today. So make sure you stick around till the end because this is going to be really value packed. Welcome to have you on. Welcome. Yeah,
thanks for having me, Shan. It's a pleasure to be here.
So real quick before we do start, I just want to get a little more background in general though. What exactly is ESG Analytics? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so the ESG world is pretty crazy. Everyone wants to invest with their values and everything, but when it comes time to actually looking at what companies do what and who's good, who's not, there's actually not that many companies covered. There's only about 10,000 companies actually covered from an ESG ratings perspective. And the reason for that is because companies have to self-disclose data, which is super expensive and just takes so much time and resources. So what we do is we use AI, machine learning, and data science to look at data outside of what a company discloses. So we look at news releases, press releases, different kinds of natural language processing, and a whole bunch of external data so that we can judge a company without actually them giving us data. And that allows us to cover a lot more companies. So we cover about 60,000 companies in real time. And so that gives people the ability to invest, from an ESG perspective without only being pigeonholed into, 10 or 15,000 companies in the scope of the world, which is tiny.
Right off the bat, this is a finance channel and we love to talk about stocks. And also, what is your current perspective on the markets as a whole right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of crazy things happening. I feel like the world has moved back into, zero interest rates. So super low to negative. We were right at the cusp of, everyone hiking and getting back to a normal cycle, but we just have flooded the market with so much more. So that's, I feel like some people get annoyed with, this is not how the market should be. This is, irrelevant, it's irrational. But I think that you just have to adjust with the way things happen, right? So for me, I think low interest rates means that there's a lot of cheap financing. There's people going to continue to, refinance their debt, to continue stock buybacks. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities in so many different places. So personally, I always love the long-term emerging markets, frontier market story. That's kind of what's core to my heart, because I always feel there's all this growth from the those portions of the world, from Kenya, Nigeria, and all the Asian countries. That's where the next future of growth will be. And then overall, I'm kind of following the story of the dollar starting to lose its power over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and this kind of seismic shift that's happening with a shift to a different currency. Is it Bitcoin? Is it another basket of reserve currencies? But that's just going to have huge implications for the way the world works. So I think we're living in really exciting times. This generational transfer of wealth, and the way the systems work is just going to be different.
That's interesting. So are you saying that are you mainly looking at stocks in emerging markets then compared to stocks in the US?
I would say my thesis always holds towards stocks in emerging markets and frontier markets. That's where I see big potential. I'm invested in a few companies now, and what I love to do is, if I can find stocks that have good cash flow, are strong management, and they also do have some exposure there. So a good example is Yum China, which is the owner of KFC. they own like KFC, Taco Bell, and I think one other, main franchise. But so my family's from Kenya, and so when I go there, you just see KFCs everywhere in the world, and it's just crazy, right? You get these companies that are based in the US that have really good, investability and are expanding and gain revenue from all the demographic growth in places like Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, and different parts of Eastern Europe. I love companies like that. That's just a personal bias.
Yeah. So, any particular companies in general though that what would be like your biggest position, or what's that one stock that you're most excited about right now at this point?
Yeah, I would say Yum China is definitely Yum brands is probably one of my favorite stocks, just for that potential that it has, like, demographically globally. Otherwise, the other thing I'm heavily invested in is an ETF called DBA, which is the Agricultural Commodities ETF. So this holds a basket of things like soybeans and corn and wheat and all of those kind of commodity futures. And the reason for that is because I think we're entering a period of inflation for the world, and over the long term, that should really serve to increase the prices of those staples, which is unfortunate for the world, but I think that's a really interesting investment thesis for the long term.
That's actually really interesting. I've actually never really thought about the markets that way, because as I've been investing for about like the last 4 to 5 years, and in my perspective, how I always invested was to look at obviously American companies, Tesla, Neo, all these different Apple, Microsoft, and try to invest based on those kind of high growth stocks. But yeah, this is definitely interesting. I've never really thought about looking into emerging markets, and like you mentioned, that ETF that tracks the basket of commodities and staples that you see prices increasing. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a lot of my assets invested in private companies like ESG Analytics, and that's where a lot of my equity stake is. So I gotta at least be stable in other places as well.
Nice. So you're an entrepreneur, right? You run a company, all of that. So what got you into, first of all, creating a company, and then also, like, how did you get into this whole world and field of finance in general?
It's crazy. I mean, I always wanted to be in finance since I was a kid. That was like passion number one. So when I was growing up, I was invested in stocks from a super young age, like 11, 12. And I was also coding a bit, but that wasn't really like my main jam. My dream was to, become a portfolio manager. And so I went to school at UBC, did a finance degree. After school, I got a job at CIBC, and then got a job in a portfolio management team at RBC doing securities. Thought that's what I wanted. Turns out my brain likes to do too many different things, and I was pursuing my CFA along that time as well. I started getting really interested in data science, especially as it applies to finance, like just the way that we use data, merge data, and that got me started programming in Python and JavaScript and all of that kind of stuff. And so I continued to build these skills, and then I started working for a company called Century Investments, and they actually got acquired. And so I had a choice when they got acquired to leave or continue working. And that was kind of an opportunity where I got together with another person who I was introduced to, and I was then the co-founder of my first company called iComply. And what we were doing there is using the Ethereum blockchain to issue digital securities, or create software to issue digital securities. And for a finance guy who loves technology, when you look at like a blockchain like Ethereum, it's like all the the best things in one. For me anyways, it was super like nerd kind of movement. Actually, I have an Ethereum tattoo on the left side of my arm, just for how much I meant for me at the time. But that really taught me a lot about product development, the legal stuff I need to run a company, the way I need to create the infrastructure, the payments account, and like that full scale, because that's where I'm best. It's a little bit of everything. I created the sales team, I created the accounting systems, I created the first product mockups, and all of that kind of stuff. And so my coding skills started to get better and better. And after I left that company, ended up at Ernst & Young in consulting, and then left that to then start ESG Analytics. And where I'm at now is the ability to kind of create companies from, when people have an idea on a napkin, I'm finding that I work best from the idea from like a napkin to a product that's funded. I can really help companies in that stage. And so, my coding skills are really good now from Python and React and JavaScript. And I think the power is taking those coding skills, but then applying it to your domain expertise like finance and data. And when you merge those two together, I think that's where the companies emerge. I will say that I also grew up in a business family. So my dad used to own a butchery, a bistro, delicatessen. So you'd find me in the back, like cutting meat and cooking stuff, when I was 7 or 8. So I think there's always an entrepreneurial streak in me. And this is my life now, and I love it.
Nice. That's actually cool. You mentioned, crypto and Ethereum. Obviously, prices have skyrocketed recently.
Yeah.
I actually bought some a couple months ago because I was like, oh, I don't want to miss out on this entire train. So, where do you see it headed now? Do you think we've peaked? Where do you see the entire price going? And yeah, what's your overall view on it?
It's so interesting, right? I mean, I remember like 2017 when we were starting iComply, we were obviously so heavy in the crypto space. So I think Bitcoin was like, that point it was like, it was getting expensive, but then everything dropped to like, I think it was one time I was buying Ethereum for like $100 per ETH or less, right? And Bitcoin for like 2 or 3 grand. And now it's just crazy. But I think just a different perspective. I don't know where the price will go in the short term, but one thing I do know is that the thesis around Bitcoin is obviously, a store of value and potentially the world's reserve currency. Ethereum is, supercomputer that can do so many different things. So where I think it can go is the fact that we're still measuring Bitcoin in US dollars. That means that we're not at like what Bitcoin could actually be used for in the future, right? If Bitcoin really took off to where it could be, we'd be buying a can of Coke for 3 Satoshis, right? And when things are priced in 3 sats and 4 sats, that's obviously when Bitcoin has taken over the world. But I think we're just seeing so much increased interest from institutions. So, I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, and you have all the big mutual funds rolling out Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin funds and all this money going in. So I think that's like the first big stage of institutional money, which is for like retail demand. And then I think if any countries or any institutions start to use it as their payment rails, then you'll just see like something crazy. So we'll see what happens there. And then for Ethereum, with their release to like Ethereum 2.0 and proof of stake and everything, it's just becoming so much more usable. And you can actually generate interest and income by staking on Ethereum and stuff like that. So if Ethereum goes the way it should be, we'll just see more and more assets issued and living on Ethereum. And just imagine, there's the price is one thing, but when you see the dollars that are held on Ethereum, that's going to be another thing. So the more and more usable each of these become, I think you can only expect it to increase. And I guess what will be interesting is today we measure that US dollars to Bitcoin because that's what we use every day. But what if there becomes a day where the US dollar is the relevant part of that, and it's like we just have one Bitcoin and it buys this much,
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting.
Yeah. How do you feel about like any of the threats towards Bitcoin and all these crypto? Because I know there are some countries, as an example, India, some other Asian countries, and even African countries looking to perhaps completely ban Bitcoin, ban crypto, and maybe even issue their own national kind of like cryptocurrency thing. And so there's obviously those kind of things that pose risks, as well as government outright banning it. So how do you feel about that? And do you see that potentially even causing Bitcoin to fall if that even goes through and happens?
I can see it. I mean, like I said, even with, people like the Fed and everyone going back to like zero interest rates, to me, it's like, it's not, if that happens, it's the wrong thing. Like if, India bans it or somebody else bans Bitcoin, like that's not the way it should be. Like that's government taking control. I just believe like if that's the case, that if that's the natural course, that's what it's going to be. And I'm not a maximalist in any ways. I'm just here to see where the world goes. We're all investors here, so you can take money and make it on both sides, right? On the good or the bad. But I could totally see how the world might not be fully ready for decentralization. It makes sense in theory. Like we have trust in institutions and, people are printing infinite money, blah, blah, blah. At the same time, in Canada, we all just got a whole bunch of CRB checks and curb checks. And in the US, you all got a bunch of stimulus checks, and this happened around the world. You can't do that with Bitcoin, right? So I'm pretty sure there's some middle ground here, but there's definitely nobody in Bitcoin pinching stimulus checks for us. Will this inflate us long term? Who knows? But I feel like the world still needs the ability to get out of mistakes. So we'll see if we can get around that. But long term, I think decentralization makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. Yeah.
That's when I just been thinking about it recently, actually. Is so we'll see. I'm in here for the long haul, and I'm just kind of excited to see where the world takes us.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting stories about crypto. I mean, yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. You also mentioned that you worked as a portfolio manager and for a investment firm. So I was just wondering, are there any secrets of trading, secrets of investing that the hedge funds they don't really want retail investors to know? And what are like the kind of things that you guys look at from that perspective from working at a fund? Like, what do you guys look for? What trends do you look for, and what strategies do you guys like particularly use in order to make good investment decisions?
Yeah, I think both at the portfolio management team and Sentry, we're investing for high net worth individuals. And in that case, people are really looking to maintain money. So we're not shooting for 100%, 200% like an unconstrained hedge fund. So I guess what I learned is, for those kind of companies or those kind of investors, you're really looking for like, high cash flow, stable companies, low volatility. And the low volatility is something that's really interesting. I think people don't think about enough. So, you can go for high growth, blue chip companies, but at Sentry, one of the things that was really cool, there was such a big focus on managing this downside capture, managing the volatility so that you can get those returns, but really keep it smooth. So that's one thing I picked up along the ways, and is that's just looking for companies with different characteristics that have just excess cash flow and are just super good at risk management. So we didn't really get any secrets in how the world works and how the market works. But I think one secret I've learned recently that I feel like people don't make use of enough is, we also have this GME stuff happening, and I'm sure I made some money in it. Some days I made some money in it. Some days I got absolutely raked over the coals. But I remember on Wall Street Bets, everyone was complaining about all the hedge funds trading in pre-market, right? And driving the price down and not having access to it. But actually, maybe on Robinhood, you don't have access to it. But if you use something like Interactive Brokers, you can totally trade between like 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. and do pre-market trades where the world is just a little bit different. So not advocating for pre-market trading, but it's just interesting that we all have access to it. I think people play in those circles, but it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah, on that GameStop situation, I know a lot of people have been saying that, what the hedge funds have been doing, maybe what Robinhood was doing, limited trading, how that was totally illegal, all that. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that what happened with the retail investors pumping it up was healthy for the markets? Because honestly, I made a few videos on GameStop on my YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people still saying, oh, we're holding the line, we're not selling. But the stock has crashed quite a lot from its peak. And a lot of people have lost a lot of money. And so that's what a lot of hedge fund people were just saying as well. Like how, like, okay, you're making money, but there's potential you're going to lose a lot as well. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it was healthy, and do you think it was really correct in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. So I was participating in the trade-in. I made some money on the way up. Definitely lost a bunch of money on the way down as well. So net, I had a gain, which I feel lucky about, thanks to some pre-market trading. But I don't know. I don't know if it's healthy or not. I think it was really cool that with the power of the internet, you got a whole bunch of people together, and not illegal, right? Like just by virtue of everyone saying, hey, we're going to buy some call options, we're going to buy some things in the stock, like you're able to pretty much create a fund from a community. So I think this just adds an extra dimension to the markets today, because I don't think it's, GameStop, AMC, and BlackBerry, which are going up and everything, and then it's done. I think now it's a new world where everyone realized that, okay, if you really want to, there's a group of people that can come together and they can buy a stock. They can, GameStop was an interesting situation, but think about like just going long stocks, just being able to do different strategies in these groups of people. It's like a new market player that didn't really exist before. You have retail, you have like institutional, and now you have like this quasi community-based like retail funds, but that are not actually funds. So we'll see. I think it's healthy and just keeping everybody on their toes, and you can't really guess where the markets are going sometimes. So for that, it's good. And then, it seemed like there were some interesting games that were being played by the institutions, the hedge funds, everything that was happening. I don't know all the details, but I just know that I got really caught up in it, and I ordered some some chicken tenders to the Melbourne Capital office. I had a note that said, "Enjoy the tendies."
Yeah. Yeah, that got me thinking. When I was looking at the whole GameStop situation, in a way, it was kind of the market was being manipulated by retail investors, which was, I thought, really cool. Like how, as a group of individuals, we were able to push the market so high, push GameStop so high. But then at the same time, it got me thinking. People are always saying how the hedge funds are the ones manipulating the markets. And now, in a way, it's retail investors manipulating it by coming together on Wall Street bets. So, like, I just wonder, like, at what point does maybe the SEC or the government decide that what we're also doing is, in a way, manipulation and kind of shuts down Wall Street bets? I don't know if that'll happen. Probably won't happen. But that just got me thinking. There's potential that they might also see what we're doing as manipulation of the markets. Because
totally. But how do you like even regulate that? I mean, I meant maybe so to do it, and by the time you do it, I mean, Wall Street bets is just like one Reddit forum. There can be a million more. There's a million different ways to do this, a million different securities, a million different transactions. So I feel like not one rule could change this, but there's something new in the market now, and I feel like we just haven't figured out how to deal with it, or if we can deal with it. Who knows?
Yeah. And then also seeing Elon Musk, just his tweets alone was sending so many stocks soaring as well. AMC, I mean, GameStop. I think he put hashtag Bitcoin in his Twitter bio, which caused it to soar like 20%. So that's crazy.
It's crazy.
Like Elon Musk,
it's a different world, right?
Yeah. Like Elon Musk should just be like every morning, hey guys, I'm going to tell you this stock, and then everyone just buys it and bumps it to the moon. That would be
funny if that was like, he sold some cars to Tesla, did that, but the majority of Tesla's income was from Elon Musk's like trading account.
Are you invested in any like high growth stocks like Tesla?
At the moment, no. I got my Bitcoin, I got Ethereum, and then for right now, I just kind of sold out of a whole bunch of stuff, so I'm going back to keeping things a little bit stable for now, at least for the near future.
Have you dive into like options trading and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, do into options trading, and then with ABT Capital, which is where I'm a portfolio manager, and they own part of ESG Analytics. We're building, tools to invest into private markets. So my high growth stuff, my high growth exposure is coming from actual startups, individual companies where we can invest in them for actual private equity style growth, which we want to democratize to everyone as well.
So with ESG analytics, I've tried starting a few companies of my own throughout the years. A couple did all right, but like they were just like small companies. So as someone who's sitting there as an entrepreneur, what would your advice be to people like me who maybe want to create a company, and like what part of the journey would you say you need to really push through, and in general, like what are the steps you took to create a successful business?
Yeah, I'd say my number one piece of advice is like stop talking and start building, right? A lot of us like to talk about the ideas and all that kind of thing. But honestly, when you start building something, it's when things come together. And if you're focused on the right thing, all the natural energy starts to pile around it. Forget the decks and all the stuff for now. But if you can learn how to code a little bit, or even use some of the no-code tools to put together the idea that's in your head and create some sort of working model or prototype, I think you'll find that it's actually easy to get investment if you need it. The world's never been easier for us to take those kind of products and push them out into a market. And the idea of what a product even is changing. So I'd say all the tools are there, and just having focused energy to really think about things properly and just work on an idea till you get to like an MVP stage will take you such a long way. And then an important thing I think people don't do is user testing. So I remember even at the early days of ESG Analytics, before we had even built the actual app, we had our mock-ups that we were doing in like Whimsical and even like pen and paper style drawings, and we're going out to analysts from all across the country and hitting them up on LinkedIn and getting in front of them and saying, hey, here's what we think we want to have on the page for our country and company analysis. What do you think? How do you feel? What would you change on this page? And gain that user insight. You can do it for $0, right? So, and you get in front of customers as well. So just taking the step to do things lean at the start I think will take you a very long way into actually building a product or a company. That's the funnest part, I think, for me as well.
Yeah. So when you were raising funding, did you particularly go to like angel investors or like private equity funds and those kind of like, Sequoia and those kind of people?
Yeah, I didn't go to Sequoia or anyone like that. I mean, now that I'm building, and once you know how to code, like you can start to work things pretty lean. I had a whole list of venture capital funds to go out and target, like all the big guys. But honestly, when I just started talking to my family, my friends, and people in my network, it just organically came, and I was sitting at the table, and all of a sudden someone's like, "Yeah, I'll throw some money. I'll throw some money. I'll throw some money." And then before I knew it, my first round was closed, and I hadn't even reached out to anyone significant. At the other company, we were always going out and raising capital, flying different places, and just always. It's almost a full-time job to raise capital, right? Like you go out, you're sending decks, you're following up, you're going through all of these pieces. So I think a combination of both work. And once you start to get some traction, you can always double down, and you'll always find that people in your network are more happy to help out than you would even think possible. Mm-hmm. It's always humbling because it means people believe in you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually really interesting because ultimately my also long-term goal is I want to create some sort of business of my own. And so that was some really helpful advice. Yeah. Look, I always thought that, to get the funding, maybe you just have to go to the big boys, big retailers. But now that you mention it, going to your network, family, that's definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, especially at the early stages. Especially at the early stages, it's a lot of angel investment, and that first 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, and will come from friends, family, from independent angels before you get to the big funds, right? At least in some of the early ventures, from my experience. So yeah, money comes from more places than we always think. I held that same view before. I'm like, oh, like how will I get some money? It's going to be like 2 million, 3 million, but it just kind of organically takes shape.
Yeah. How much has your company raised, if you can disclose that?
We can't disclose that for ESG Analytics, but I would say for the previous company, we raised at least 2 million.
Wow. Okay. That's impressive. Wow. Nice. So currently I'm about to head off to university. I'm looking to get into investment banking, hopefully maybe work in the whole financial sector as a whole. Maybe there are also people who are watching this right now. So hopefully maybe trying to also get into the field of finance. So are there any tips or strategies you could tell to be successful in a career in this field?
Yeah, my top two things I would say is like just get familiar with technology. We can all do it, especially all of us like Gen Y and Z, like we get it, right? So if you're studying finance or whatever you're studying, get the technical element alongside, whether it's Python or web development or whatever programming that you need to take your business knowledge or whatever knowledge and put it into actual practice. That will always go a long way. And the second thing is, I think the way the businesses are just changing, right? So traditional investment banking and traditional finance roles are still there, but there's so many new ones opening up with tech startups and companies that are high growth that are looking for the same skills, but in a different way. So I think just be open to what you consider the next job, right? Mm-hmm. Lots of opportunities.
Yeah. So from a lot of what you've been saying, it seems like you really believe that technology is obviously the future. You're stressing the point of how everyone should learn how to code and how that can be super helpful. Yeah. So is there any particular company in general or investments you see in tech that you believe are the perfect opportunities to invest in to ride that technology wave for years to come?
It's a good question. I don't have any at the top of my head. Couldn't tell you that actually. But I would say that every company is kind of invested in technology. So while I think before technology was, a sector, right now everything is a technology-enabled business. Mm-hmm. Like I think of companies like Walmart, which, traditionally has like its hub and spoke stores everywhere, but now you see that they're getting into financial payments and all the lending and infrastructure and fintech apps with some of their acquisitions. And who knows, maybe they're like the next Alibaba / Walmart style venture, right? Yeah. So I just think that everything is technology enabled these days. Might as well learn it. It's easier than you think a lot of the time. Just pick a project on YouTube and just follow it for like 20 lessons, and you're gonna end up with something useful at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. I'll be honest. I feel like I'm out of questions. You've told a lot of valuable information. I think especially things you talked about in the start really opened up my eyes to new investment opportunities. Like as you mentioned with the whole investing in emerging markets and that ETF you mentioned at the start. These are really interesting things that I believe a lot of my viewers will benefit from because you offered a completely whole new perspective on how to look at the markets and companies to look at. So that was a really interesting interview. And is there anything else you want to add on your side about people, how they can become more profitable traders, investors, or anything in general?
Yeah, I don't know about becoming a profitable trader because I feel like the market just always keeps us guessing. So sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't, but at least you can, stay stable for the long term. And just kind of look at the long term future trends, right? I always look at the demographic trends. And if you just look at where the populations are growing, like Nigeria is going to be like the biggest workforce in the world by like 2050. And Stripe just started making some big acquisitions in the space. So where is the growth going to come from? Probably there. How it's going to happen, we don't know. But yeah, otherwise, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I don't get to talk to too many people on your age spectrum because I feel like everyone I work with is so much older than me. So it's nice to share that because I think obviously like I'm not that old and still super young, and I think our generations have just such a long way to go, and we're like this crazy global connected, super smart workforce that's coming up. So I think we're going to change the world in so many different ways. You
All right.
like this is just testament to that, right?
Yeah. So obviously great to have you. And guys, make sure you go like and comment and let me know down below what you guys think about this whole interview, if you guys found anything helpful, and what you guys think about these new ideas that Qayyum offered to us. And I'll be sure to reply to them. Thanks again, Qayyum.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.